Hello everyone, I hope you're all well. Today's lesson is about the nervous system. So our objective for today is to know how the nervous system enables you to respond to your environment. So as always, we're going to start with some retrieval practice. This is work that you will have done in year 10 on B1, so biology questions from last year. So if you'd like to pause the screencast now, try and answer these 10 questions, and then when you've done them, unpause and we will go through the answers. Okay, let's see how you got on then. So here are the answers. Number 1, which part of the blood cell carries oxygen? That is red blood cells. Number 2, which gas is released during aerobic respiration? That is carbon dioxide, and that's what we breathe out. Number 3, where does aerobic respiration take place? It's in the mitochondria. Number 4, which part of the cell contains DNA? That is a nucleus. And that's in animals and plants, so that's in eukaryotic cells. In bacterial cells, they do not have a nucleus. Number 5, where in a plant cell does photosynthesis happen? It is the chloroplasts. Number 6, what is a communicable disease? That is a disease that is passed from organism to organism and it's caused by pathogens. So it is caused by bacteria, viruses, protists, or fungus. Number 7, which type of pathogen causes the flu? That is a virus. Number 8, the type of medicine you are given for a bacterial infection are antibiotics. Antibiotics are not given for viral infections, they're only given for bacterial infections. Number 9, name one non-communicable disease. So a non-communicable disease is one that cannot be passed from organism to organism. So it's anything genetic, such as cystic fibrosis, Huntington's, red-green colour blindness. Other examples that aren't caused by pathogens are cancer. So any of those would be good answers. Number 10, name the body's largest organ which acts as a barrier to pathogens. That is the skin. Okay, so if you make sure that you have marked those in green pen or a different coloured pen and make a note of the questions that you couldn't answer, because they're the questions that you will need to go over again. Okay, so moving on. So today we're going to look at the nervous system. Now your nervous system enables you to react to your surroundings. Okay, so whether that is somebody at home telling you that your tea is ready, or it might be that you can smell the food being cooked, or it might be that you are watching a friend cross the road, so you run outside to say hello. All of those reactions are due to your nervous system. Now, your nervous system mainly consists of your brain, your spinal cord, neurons, which is a biological word for nerve cells, and also receptor cells. So you have receptor cells in lots of different places in your body. Now, they're linked to your senses. So at primary school, you probably learnt about your senses. And it is certain receptor cells in those areas of your body that enable you to respond to your environment. So the types of receptor cells are as follows. You might want to jot these down. So number 1, we have light receptor cells in the eyes. Number 2, hopefully be able to get this one, we have sound receptor cells in the ears. Number 3, you probably would get this one as well, taste receptor cells on the tongue. And number 4, we have smell receptor cells in the nose. And number 5, we have touch, pressure and temperature receptor cells in your skin. Okay, so this is a dissected brain, spinal cord and sections of your major nerves. Now you'll see the brain at the top there. This is your spinal cord. Okay, that is normally part of your spine. And then you have also got along here major nerves. So your nerves are some of the longest cells in your body that branch off from the central nervous system. So the central nervous system is the brain here at the top, followed by your spine. Okay, really, really important parts of your body, but very, very sensitive. So if these get damaged, any of these get damaged, it can have a big impact on the way that you can respond to your environment. Okay, so just to summarise that little bit, we can look at the nervous system as 2 separate parts. So we've got the central nervous system, as we've just described, which is the brain and the spinal cord, and we've also got the peripheral nervous system, which are your sensory neurons, your motor neurons, and your relay neurons, which we will learn more about later in today's lesson and in future lessons. So this is just what we've just talked about, but as a diagram. So you can see the brain at the top, followed by the spinal cord. Take a note of the spelling of cord, because it's not a musical chord. It's C-O-R-D. And then from your spinal cord, you have your peripheral nervous system, which are your neurons, which move, spread away from your central nervous system. Okay, let's see how all these different parts work together then to allow you to respond to your environment. So this lesson, we are just going to talk about voluntary actions. Now, a voluntary action is also known as a conscious action, and more simply put, it's just something that you are thinking about doing. Okay, so it's not a reflex, which we'll talk about next lesson. It's something that you actually think about doing and you know you are going to do. So for example, if we're in lesson and I ask you to pick up your pen, okay, you are going to think about picking it up and then very quickly pick it up. That is a conscious action. That is a voluntary action. That is what we're going to talk about today. Okay, so this pathway you must learn. Stimulus receptor coordinator effector response. Now, I appreciate at this moment in time that won't mean much to you, but we're going to talk it through now. Okay, so let's call this boy here Bob. Okay, so Bob is in the desert and a camel is coming towards him. Now, Bob doesn't really like camels, so he's going to respond to the camel in a certain way. So the object or the thing that you are going to respond to is called your stimulus. So if you could jot this down in your books, stimulus receptor coordinator effector response, and under each word we're going to write which part of the reaction we are talking about. So the stimulus in this case is the camel. Okay, so the camel is what Bob is going to respond to. Now, Bob is looking straight at the camel. Therefore, the receptor or the receptor cells are the light receptors in his eyes, because they are what are enabling him to see the camel. Okay, now a message is then going to be sent from Bob's eyes to his brain, which is the coordinator, and the message will be sent back from his brain to Bob's legs, okay, but more specifically the muscles in his legs, which will allow him to run away, because Bob doesn't like the camel. Okay, so the effector are his muscles in his legs, and the response is Bob running away. Okay, so we're going to go through that again. The stimulus in this case is the camel. So underneath stimulus, you need to write camel. The receptor cells are his light receptor cells in his eyes, which will then send a message to his coordinator, which is his brain. The coordinator will then send a message to his effector, which in this case are the muscles in his legs, which will allow him to respond, and his response is going to be run away, because Bob doesn't like camels. Okay, so make sure you've got that into your books and make sure you learn this pathway: stimulus receptor coordinator effector response. Okay, right, let's look at another voluntary action then. So, it's Bob again. So again, it describes here that a voluntary action is where the brain makes a considered response. Now, this is exactly what we've just talked about, but this time we're talking about which neurons are involved. So let's look at the pathway. We have got the receptors in his skin are detecting the stimulus. So the stimulus in this case is Bob's dog, who is licking him. Okay, he's licking his hands. Now, we know that the message will go from his hand to his brain, but the added bit of information here is that the receptor cells in his skin will receive this information, but it's actually the sensory neuron that sends the message to the coordinator. And remember what the coordinator is? In this case, it is the brain. Okay, now the brain decides that it is going to move Bob's hand away from the dog. So the message will then be sent back to the muscles in his arms, but this time look at the name of this neuron. It is called the motor neuron. Okay, the motor neuron sends a message to the effector, and that will allow him to respond, okay, which means that Bob can move his hand away. So if I were you, I would pause this screen and make sure you've got these stages down. So let's go through this again. So the stimulus in this case is the dog, okay? The receptor are the receptor cells in his skin. The sensory neuron will then send a message to the coordinator, and you need to know that the coordinator is the brain. The brain will then send a message via the motor neurons back to the effector. The effector in this case are the muscles in his arms, okay? And that will cause him to respond, and it says at number 6, which will then mean that he moves his hand away, okay? Now, something I just need to point out before we move on is that the effector will either be a muscle or a gland. Okay, so your body has muscles, your body has glands. It will either be the muscle or the gland that is the effector. The two examples that we have looked at have both been the muscles, because Bob ran away from the camel before and he's moving his hand away from the dog. That is both caused by muscles. Okay. So, just to summarise this short lesson, I've put together a little quick quiz on the next slide. So I'd like you to have a go at these 7 questions. So please pause the screencast, have a go at answering the questions, and then when you've done them, you can get your green pen and we will go through them after you've completed them. Try your best. Okay, so here are the answers. Number 1, what is the coordinator in a voluntary response? It is the brain. So it's the brain that's making a decision of how you are going to respond to your environment. Number 2, which 2 parts of the body act as the effector? It can be the muscles, but it can also be the glands. Number 3, which type of receptor are found in the ears? They are sound receptor cells. Number 4, which type of receptor are found in the nose? They are smell receptor cells. Number 5, which 3 things does your skin respond to? Temperature, pressure, and touch. What is always at the beginning of a nervous pathway? It is a stimulus. You have to respond to something, so the stimulus will always be at the beginning. And then it asks you to put the following in order. Okay, so that would be stimulus, receptor, coordinator, effector, response. Now, please remember you have information about the nervous system in your knowledge organisers. So go to your knowledge organisers now, find the relevant information about your nervous system and add to the notes that you have taken from today's session. Okay, and remember you can watch this as many times as you like, so if there's anything you've missed or misunderstood, please go back over the screencast, or you can email me at g.jones2@smirchers.com and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Okay, have a great day. Take care. See you soon.